All right, and we are back. So, have two or one more match, and technically a match to cover because this next one it's kind of difficult to call a match with the route they went.
Sure.
So, a lot of people were expecting the Fiend to return, especially on this night. Because they felt like he's been gone for a while, and what more perfect way for him to return than in a match like this?
And a match like this, for folks tuning in just now, if you didn't hear part one, we're talking about WWE Fastlane. We're talking about Randy Orton versus Alexa Bliss. And wait a minute, Jack. Did I just say Randy Orton versus a girl?
You really look at that, and you're going into it. I knew that at most they were probably just gonna let Randy maybe RKO her at the very at the most. Like that was what they were gonna let him get away with, nothing more.
Yeah,
because I knew.
And let's be clear, Alexa Bliss made the challenge.
Yeah, Alexa
she
Bliss
told Randy Orton, if you want me out of your life, you're going to have to take me out. That was so good, Jack.
Yeah, and, I was like, man, because, again, I was only thinking that that's all Orton was going to get away with, because you can't do more than that, right now,
Right.
Obviously, Orton got away with a lot more in his earlier career.
Right.
But, times are changed, especially for the better, so.
And intergender wrestling is widely celebrated in every other part of the world, and is there's a respect there, and there's a way to do it.
Yeah.
And you and I, I'm sure, wondered the same going into Sunday, and that was how is the WWE going to do it?
Yeah, and especially because, I don't know if this was before the event or not. I'm struggling to remember. Oh, I believe it was before. I was seeing somewhat of the backlash from fans that they were giving to Will Ospreay for him doing essentially an RKO on his girlfriend Bea Priestley out in New Japan.
Oh yeah, his cutter.
Yeah, he did
the Os cutter.
Yeah, he did it on his girlfriend. I was seeing how fans.
He got some flack, huh?
Yeah, I was seeing that. I'm like, yeah, so at most they might let him do an RKO, but I was kind of more expecting, the moment he almost gets to Alexa Bliss, something happens, with either Alexa Bliss's powers or the Fiend returning. And
yeah, and it's funny that you say that you were expecting the Fiend to return. Last time we saw him was in December when Randy Orton set him on fire. That was a thing we saw happen. And I heard somebody on YouTube say, yeah, you definitely think... No, what did they say? No, they hoped... I heard somebody say something really frustrating. They were like, how could you build to a match at WrestleMania with the guy not even showing up? That's why they were advocating that Wyatt needs to show up. Yeah, and I go, what you talking about, Willis? Undertaker made a career! A career! For the last, decade, they've built matches around him where he didn't show up.
I know. Are we not going to talk about Mania 34 and 31 where, his feud with John Cena and Bray Wyatt wasn't until, he showed up at Mania?
How about Kane at WrestleMania 20? Yeah. He showed up at WrestleMania.
Yeah, so...
Kane was feuding with lights and fog.
Yeah, Bray Wyatt did all his promos back in 2015, and the only sign he got of Undertaker was lightning striking the rocking chair.
Yes, exactly. So, right, instead of having a traditional wrestling match, we got some spooky bollocks, as they say on Cultaholic's YouTube channel. Alexa Bliss uses her powers to make the lights turn purple, and then we've got a sort of a cat and mouse chase scene.
Yeah, again, they started off with Randy Orton having that black liquid coming out of his mouth, but thankfully this time, as if it would help, the timekeeper has a towel for him to clean it up. And then he tries to go at Bliss, and I believe she shot a fireball at him again.
Yes, she did.
And then, like, she gets out the ring, and Orton tries to follow her, and then one of the lights fall down right in front of him. And then I can't remember if one more thing happens, but I know he gets back in the ring with her. And like I mentioned, as soon as he's about to get to her, that's when you see the Fiend's hand come out from under the ring.
Yep.
And that's when he grabs Orton, and that's when you see him come up, and he has this new burnt mask and burnt attire.
I don't think it's new. I think he's wearing the burnt attire from December. Someone took a shot of his hand, and his hand, isn't wearing a complete glove. It has the remnants of a glove, and you can see 2 of the 4 letters that said hate. So it is supposed to be, at least, definitely the remnants of what we all left in the ring in December. What do you think of him?
I thought it looked pretty, crazy, just seeing the way he looked. And,
yeah, agreed.
I'm wondering where they're going to go with this. That was kind of my first thought especially my first thought was, how long are they going to run with it? Is it going to be just till Mania where he has the match with Randy? Or is this going to be like a continual look?
Yeah, it's weird for him to, if you have magic, don't you replenish your gear or something?
Yeah.
Don't you restore it?
Yeah, and, then Fiend hits him with, I believe he hit him with,
Sister Abigail.
Yeah, Sister Abigail. And then Alexa Bliss pins Orton. And so she technically wins the match against Orton.
Yes, she does.
Which,
good on the ref to jump back in the ring.
And that was the one thing to me was I kind of saw the ref stand there. And so I guess it's a thing of fear, but it was like, ref, aren't you going to call a DQ on that? Because I don't think there was no disqualifications for this match. I think.
Oh, true. Well, he also didn't call anything on the lighting rig falling from the ceiling, the fireball, or the black liquid. Maybe even would be grounds for something.
Yeah. But so, this starts to build or continues to build for what everyone assumed would be Orton versus The Fiend at Mania. Now, my biggest thing is, though, they announced the match, but it seems like it's only going to be a regular match. Obviously, 3 weeks ago, they could, last second announce it's going to be something like a Firefly Funhouse.
But you think, Jack, with 3 weeks left, you think that if they're going to do a Firefly Funhouse match, they've got to film that thing really, really quickly.
Yeah. And that's why, I have a feeling they're just going to make it a normal match because, they're going to be like, oh, well, we have a crowd there. How are we going to do a cinematic match with a crowd? But honestly, looking at this match, I feel like it needs a cinematic type of feel to it.
You think you get a sense that the character really needs a cinematic kind of thing.
Yeah. And again, you don't want to make it a yearly thing, but, it would be... It would just kind of make sense, at least right now, to have another Firefly Funhouse again at Mania, especially with this big-time opponent in Orton.
Mm-hmm.
If you had one with Cena, it makes sense to do one with Orton because both have such storied past. You could really build that, like how you did with the Cena match. You can do that with Orton here in a Firefly Funhouse.
We'll see, but it was Alexa Bliss and The Fiend standing tall here.
Yeah. But, so, we move on to the main event between Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns. And here they are, 6 years later, facing off at Fastlane once again.
Yeah, that was a really neat callback to the fact that these two men have fought once before at Fastlane prior to Daniel Bryan's early retirement. Spoiler alert, Jack, I fell asleep during this match. I've seen the finish, but you're going to have to walk me through some of its ups and, and downs.
So, first off, again, promo package was really good.
Very good.
You know,
I think this is the stronger Mania match buildup that there is.
Yeah, and you know, I brought up WrestleMania 31 earlier. I feel like this Mania is gonna have a similar feel to it, because you know, Mania 31, a lot of people like showed that like they kind of struggled with building up, and that was because there was a lot of injuries at the time. You know, and I think it was kind of the same thing with 32, where they kind of had injuries, so it was kind of tough to build matches. You know, and Mania 31 also like struggled with just creating hype for the event, but it ended up having a lot of great matches. And I feel like that's what's going to be the case for this Mania, because aside from this Edge Reigns feud, and you know, spoiler from the finish, potentially could add Daniel Bryan into the mix for a triple threat at Mania. It really does. It feels like this was the only one that's been properly built.
Right.
Like, we're slowly getting Bobby and Drew built up. As we mentioned earlier, Banks and Belair kind of have felt like it's fallen flat in its build. We now have 3 weeks to build Asuka and Rhea into a match.
And you got The Fiend and Orton, who have also like the most enticing story to pay off, but we're not sure how it's going to pay off. Like, should I feel hyped, or is this going to be a straight wrestling match? It's weird.
Yeah,
because now you've handcuffed yourself when you're putting them in front of an audience.
Yeah, especially because it's like, as I mentioned, when in a cinematic field, do you really, especially like if there still happens to be sun out by the time they do that match, wouldn't it be kind of awkward to see the Fiend like an Orton face like in daytime rather than like...
It's going to be in Florida, so I imagine it's going to get dark by the time, you know, it's going to get dark at a reasonable hour. You only have to worry about the sun on the West Coast.
Okay.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Actually, you know what they'll do for Orton Fiend? It's going to be the Fiend and Alexa Bliss intergender tag match versus Orton and his wife, who took issue with Alexa Bliss and her actions on Sunday.
I saw that, and everyone was pitching for that idea now.
Don't you dare, WWE. Don't you dare.
No, they'll have the Fiend versus Orton, and Soulja Boy will come in to start his feud with Randy Orton because of their Twitter beef.
Hey, don't forget the second highest rated, or not highest rated, but most hyped match of WrestleMania besides the Universal title picture. It's Bad Bunny versus The Miz. 1-on-1.
Everyone's surprised that wasn't a tag match.
Right. You got two guys flanking each of them in their corner. God, Damian Priest can't even make his way onto the WrestleMania card this way.
Oh, I know, but
I kind of feel bad for the guy. Kinda.
But so this match was honestly just really good, and with how long it went, it gave me that Kevin Owens Reigns matches vibe, where it was just never say die from both men.
Nice.
You know, Bryan, being the technical wrestler that he was, kept trying to wrestle Reigns down to the mat, you know, trying to work to his strength, you know, of mat-based wrestling and all these technical moves and submissions. You know, He kept targeting his legs. You know, there was multiple points where he would try and get him in heel hooks to weaken his legs, because obviously being the bigger guy, Bryan's going to need to chop him down a bit. Reigns was just using his power over and over, you know. And again, while there wasn't too many memorable spots, it was just overall a great match, you know, that really continued to build. And the only part that was like a complaint to me, because I just found it so funny and how absurd it was that, what's it called? Bryan, I believe he either kicked or like pushed Reigns back, and so Reigns like stumbles back, and then the ref holds him up instead of like getting out of the way, and that's when I kind of knew what was going to happen. But the ref holds Reigns up, and he stays there holding him up for like 3-5 seconds, and it's enough for when Bryan goes for the knee, Reigns just moves out, and the ref gets knocked down.
I see.
And I just saw that, and I was like, there's no other instance where the ref would stay there holding the guy up, you know. But of course they do that so that Edge can now get in and start his enforcer role, because for the majority of the match, it just seemed like he was a non-factor, almost making it seem like, well, what was the point of making him enforcer?
You knew they were going to like save it for the end. To what end is he going to be an enforcer at the beginning?
Yeah, and there comes a point where the two men are just going at it, and then Jey Uso comes in, and I believe Brian had Reigns in a submission, because like as the whole story being, because Reigns told Brian, I would rather die than tap to you.
Yeah,
and now Brian's trying to prove his point by trying to make Roman tap to him, and it looks like he's about to, but then Jey comes in, and immediately he super kicks Edge, because he's like, I'm not gonna super kick one of the other two and have you try and
call the match.
Yeah, call the match. So he takes out Edge first, and then he takes out Brian, and then there becomes a scuffle between there, and then a chair gets involved, and that's when I believe Edge grabs the chair, and that's when Reigns moves out the way and Brian hits him with a running knee. With the chair.
Roman Reigns is just ducking and dodging, huh?
Yeah, and no. What happens is Edge is down and he starts getting up, and so is Reigns. And Brian has a chair, and so when he goes to swing it at Reigns, that's when Reigns moves and he accidentally hits Edge. And then you think, it's gonna be over, because you see Roman. I think Roman hit him with a spear, and you think that's it. But then Brian, being technical as he is, he counters the spear, wrestles Reigns down into the yes lock, and Edge is down, the ref is down, so no one's there to see it. But you slowly see like Reigns essentially is passed out, but you slowly see his hand reach up to where Brian has him locked at the mouth, and you slowly see him tapping out.
It's so good. This is the part that I've seen where you could be convinced it's not a tap out, but it looks so much like a tap out. He gets the visual pin on the guy, doesn't he, Daniel Bryan?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was so good.
Yeah, and to continue building their story for Mania,
So Daniel Bryan wins. He made the head of the table tap out, right? Surely somebody saw that, called for the bell, gave him the belt, changed the posters. That's what happened, right, Jack?
Well, someone did see it. The special enforcer, Edge. But to continue building this story, Edge sees essentially Roman finally tapping to Daniel. But, with the whole thing of, Brian telling Edge that he doesn't, or Edge telling Brian he doesn't think Brian can beat Roman. And, and this whole thing trying to be built towards Edge and Roman, seeing Roman give up, angers Edge to the point where he gets that chair and hits Brian with it, because he's frustrated at the fact that Roman is tapping to Brian.
Now you got to clear this one up for me, and this sounds like a match I'm going to have to look up. I got to watch. But did Edge see Roman semi-tap out?
I assume so, because you kind of see him in the corner a bit, from what I was seeing people saying, because I didn't catch it first, but some people were saying you could somewhat see like Edge getting up in the corner.
Yeah.
And that's when he's like, as he's getting up, he slowly sees like Reigns somewhat tapping.
Yeah.
But I've also seen people say that it was just Edge getting back at Brian, the classic thing where they accidentally hit someone with a chair, and because they didn't know it was an accident, they go back and hit someone or hit the person back. That's what people were also saying. So it's kind of a thing of choose what your headcanon wants to be.
That's so funny how often we do that. Looking at online, I Googled, did Edge see Roman tap? And on at least 3 websites, their narration of the results say neither the official nor Special Enforcer Edge saw it. Neither the ref nor Edge saw it. So, I think he came from an angle where he could have missed it, but it would have made the story so incredibly good if they made a camera pan to his big old coked out face of the eyes. Those eyes Edge gets? If he saw the tap, if he did that thing where he starts pulling his hair and then he makes this decision of ruining the match for Daniel Bryan.
Yeah, so he hits Bryan with that chair, and then he leaves in frustration, you know. And I think that's the reason why I kind of believe in headcanon that, you know, he saw Roman tapping was because he left frustrated. You know,
yes,
and like,
yeah, and I've seen the clip where he's sort of saying, "This is my moment," right? Like,
yeah,
really ramping up that heelness.
Yeah, and that's why I think he's like, that's the story they're trying to tell us that he saw it, and they might say on SmackDown that he saw it. You know,
that would be incredible. Yeah, that would be a really neat continuation of the story on Friday's Night SmackDown. If they get him to say, "Did you see it?" And with an Edge with his gritted teeth and his weird wrinkly face says, "I saw it."
Yeah, especially because, you know, a lot of people say, well, oh, he's frustrated because Bryan hit him, you know, with the chair. But no, because of the fact, as you brought up, you know, how he's saying, this is my moment, you know, that shows the frustration, I think, to kind of show. And hopefully that's the story they build, is that he saw Roman tap, and that's what made him frustrated, was that.
And I hope the story they build is Edge sees Roman as a guy he can beat, but Edge doesn't see, or Edge sees Daniel Bryan as somebody he can't beat.
Yeah. Or, you know, to continue off of 2014, you know, all these years later, someone like Edge comes out and says he doesn't think Bryan is on the level as him and Roman are.
Oh my, even though that match in and of itself is plenty of evidence to the contrary. You know, the build, going back to the build, this build I'm excited to follow to WrestleMania, and that hype package got me so hyped. How about that line Daniel Bryan hits Roman Reigns? Roman Reigns isn't going to give him the time of day. And he goes, "Oh, you're just mad because I made Jay tap and you couldn't make Jay tap when they had that submission match."
Such good build-up and callback. See, this is how you do long-term storytelling. You know?
We're calling back the stuff in September, and it works.
This is how you do long. That's my biggest issue with WWE right now, is their definition of long-term storyline for a lot of storylines is, oh, well, they've had so many matches, so, you know, because they keep having this many matches from, like, January to February, it's long term, you know.
You know.
And because they keep having DQ finishes, they have to keep having the match over and over until there's a finish.
Right.
Whereas
anyway, so this one I'm definitely the most excited about. I think Daniel Bryan is going to be added to the match. And here we go, Jack. So we can talk about our final thoughts of Fastlane, but we can also talk about some big old WrestleMania predictions. If Daniel Bryan's added to the match, who wins?
You see, a lot of people want... So there's a lot of ways they can go with this. They can either go with Edge or Bryan as the win, because it's a night 2. And because of how WWE operates, they always try and make their Manias finish off with a feel-good moment, or what's proposed to be a feel-good moment, you know?
Yeah.
Last year, it was Drew finally conquering Brock and winning that WWE title after 10-plus years.
Right.
There was the year before with Becky Lynch finally winning, in this case, both women's titles. 34 was originally supposed to be Reigns, but because the fans weren't behind Reigns, they changed it last second. So because of how last second it was, there wasn't that, like, feel-good moment, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But, like, for the most part, a lot of Manias have had, like, their feel-good moments at the end, so it could
And I'll tell
sense.
you what, I don't think this year is going to be different. It's going to be the first event in over a year with a live audience. You think they're definitely going to build to a big, warm, fuzzy ending for the 25,000 people in attendance this year's WrestleMania.
Yeah, even though I would be content with it happening, solely because while it does you look at it and go, well, should Reigns lose this early into his gimmick, you know, of being the tribal chief? I mean, sure, it's been here since SummerSlam, but, like, a lot of people have been wanting him to carry that title into this year's SummerSlam, you know. But the way I think about it, yes, you can give that rub to essentially, like, a younger talent, you know, or give that rub of beating Roman at his peak to, like, just someone else to get them up to the main event level. Realistically, while there is some guys that we as fans would love to see, it would make at least some logical sense that either Bryan or Edge is one of the two that beats him at Mania. That, or they run the typical triple threat route where the third man involved is the one that gets pinned so that the champion doesn't.
Oh no. Oh no.
I could see one of those having where, and I think they're going to give it to Edge more than likely because, cap it off, 10 years, retired, came back, got injured again, but came back to win the Rumble, and now he's back to claim what he never lost,
Yeah.
The only hope, and I know a lot of fans feel this way, the only hope that comes with Edge winning that title is he brings back the big gold.
Oh,
the big gold heavyweight.
Don't hold your breath. Hey, you know who's holding the big gold belt? Mephisto.
Really?
Did you watch WandaVision on Disney Plus?
I have not yet.
Okay, Jack. Oh, I don't want to ruin it. Are you going to watch it?
I might, but I don't think anytime soon, just because of school. So, I don't really mind spoilers.
Okay, this isn't. If you're watching it, I'm going to spoil one thing. But it's a non-spoiler. See, Jack, in the beginning of it all, when everyone was beginning to speculate what was going on, people thought Mephisto was going to be sort of at the helm.
Mm-hmm.
They said for 9 episodes, Jack, next week we're going to get Mephisto. The Marvel devil. Hell exists in the Marvel universe. It has a devil. His name's Mephisto. Jack, after 9 episodes, that being never appeared. It was the greatest swerve of all time. And there was so much evidence that it was the case that, he was coming. And he never came, Jack. Anyway, Mephisto was wearing your big gold belt.
Yeah, that's the hope people want, because that's the funny thing was when someone brought it up, they were like, oh, Edge is back to claim when he never lost. I looked at him like, the Universal title didn't exist when Edge was champion. Sure, it came to replace the big gold belt, but...
Would it be funny if Edge was like, and I've never lost it, so we're good.
Yeah, I never lost it, so, and the title's no longer in existence, so, technically I never lost it.
I've been here to reclaim the non-WWE heavyweight title. By the way, WandaVision fans who think I've ruined it because I told you Mephisto's not coming, watch and enjoy that show knowing Mephisto's not coming. I think it ruined it for some people that they were let down like that.
Much like, hopefully, I can enjoy Asuka versus Rhea Ripley with hope that Charlotte isn't joining.
Oh my gosh. Oh, wait, maybe she's the third member of a triple threat who takes the pin, but the champ doesn't. Hopeful, wishful thinking. Gosh. I hate this time here, Jack. It's all just wishful, hopeful thinking.
You say that, but think back last year, NXT, it could happen because Charlotte was the champion at NXT in your house, but she wasn't the one that took the pin, but... I don't know how likely it would be for Charlotte to be in a triple threat and be the one to take the pin. She didn't
Depends on how much she loves Andrade.
Speaking of which, before we continue WrestleMania news, where do you see Andrade popping up now that he's been granted his release?
You'd think you'd keep him in the States. I think that would translate to a bigger audience, right?
Yeah.
I also feel like, I don't know if it's the case that there's more money to be made in the States or Japan.
Yeah.
It's so crazy just, how many wrestlers are sort of prominently featured on regular programming.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of Ring of Honor. They have Roosh, and they got this little quartet that he heads, and I'm thinking of it as a quartet, thinking, gosh, that's enough guys. He doesn't need to be a part of that. The natural thing would go to Mexico, but that's really kind of a step back. What's new territory? AEW don't know how to use the people that they have now. So let's say Japan. Ship them off to Japan. Let's go.
Yeah, especially because like the main arguments I've seen is it doesn't make sense for him to go back to CMLL down in Mexico because he's done it all down there.
Right.
People want him to join as you mentioned, ROH with they mention it as his family, you know.
Right.
Down up in ROH, you know, they're in Maryland, right?
Ring of Honor, Maine?
Maine?
They're up there.
Yeah, they're up in the East Coast, so they want him to go there. Or, you know, they want him to reunite, as you mentioned, in New Japan with Los Ingobernales.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they want him to reunite with Naito and them. So, I mean...
That wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
Yeah. And I feel, as you mentioned, because, like, it's 4 of them up in ROH, so it would kind of be tough to have that, like, 5th member of him. Whereas LIJ out in Japan, you know, you can kind of fit him more easily in there with Naito and Bushi and them.
Right.
And it would kind of fit more well than just, you know, the 4 men that they have out in ROH.
Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't hate it if he was just, an on his own guy, you know.
Yeah.
You can try to do that.
Yeah.
This happens too, Jack, with a lot of wrestlers who leave WWE, and you think, wow, that was a lot of wasted potential. Sometimes I feel like they show up at places and they reveal the gaps or the flaws in their character and their performance. And I worry about Andrade going, you think he'd be all right wherever he goes, but I hope that he gets paired with somebody who can talk for him.
Yeah, which is why a lot of people are thinking he
Mexico.
convinces Vega to go from wherever he goes.
That's why I might, fathom like an outing in Mexico because he can talk for himself there.
Yeah. Or, instead of teaming up with the people in ROH, he could just maybe do a solo run and bring Vega if she's down, But, yeah, his best options are most likely going to be returning to Mexico or maybe even just Japan where he can just kind of be involved in stuff but, like, not necessarily have to talk.
True. Also true. I never heard Dragon Lee say anything.
But... And then, when it comes to Mania, do you think they give Drew that big win in front of fans now, or do they keep the title on Lashley?
I'm thinking. This is good podcasting, silent thinking. Good question. The Miz lost it in a week, right?
Yeah.
That's gotta be something you avoid. 2 really short reigns back to back.
Yeah.
With the title. And you know what? I think, even though he's going in as a heel, I think Bobby Lashley retaining the championship would be just as feel good a story as Drew's.
Yeah.
I think all the 25,000 people in attendance are going to be in on the know and just feel real good for Bobby Lashley to hold the title at WrestleMania.
Yeah. And especially because, like, the way I look at it, if Belair is being positioned as a face, we don't know what's going to happen with Asuka and Ripley yet, but I assume they might just do either a face versus face or, just copy the Banks Belair storyline and turn Asuka heel. But you already know if Belair wins, she's going to get the crowd ovation. When Ripley, if she wins, she's going to get the crowd behind her. As you mentioned, Bobby's probably going to have the crowd behind him. You're probably going with Edge or Bryan, if it's a triple threat.
That's crazy. So it's interesting you bring up what's the probability that we're going to have 4 major title changes in 2 nights?
Yeah.
You think that's impossible.
Yeah. And that's why I think we're going to see the 4 main titles change and see maybe a lot of the mid-card titles,
remain the same.
Yeah. I think maybe we might see the women's tag title change. I don't know yet. Depends on if they even have a match and who's in it. But I can definitely see the SmackDown champions changing, tag champions changing, the Raw tag champions changing, or not changing, but I can maybe see SmackDown retaining. Maybe the Raw ones change, but I can also see the New Day retaining there. I can definitely see Big E retaining because, you know, it feels like they need to give him more in his reign than just, you know, one match with Sami Zayn and then 3-4 with Apollo Crews.
Right.
I can see Riddle retaining, and so it's like when you have that many retaining, it would make sense to have the 4 main ones change, especially, again, because they have it's such a big moment that they're finally having crowds back after a year.
It's true. Keep an eye on one of those belts that you just described. One of those is going to be a multi-man affair or multi-women affair. Watch and see. Maybe it's the women's tag where there's 3 or 4 teams that they throw together. Maybe it's the Intercontinental where it's 6 guys. You know what I mean? Maybe it's Riddle. Maybe the United States Championship is defended against Riddle, Ali, and all the former members of Retribution. But now that I think about it, here's my prediction. I'm going to put it right here in recorded form so we can look back in 3 weeks and see how close we came, Jack. But I'm going to say that Rhea wins, Sasha retains, Bryan wins, Bobby retains. Boom. I think we're going to get one of each.
Yeah. I can see that happening.
Sasha and Bobby retaining.
Now, what about Stand and Deliver?
I'm behind 2 weeks on my NXT, and I'll happily report next time we meet how NXT feels on Peacock. But it's Karrion Kross versus Balor. Oh, Kross has got to win.
The one thing I saw that I somewhat agreed with was, you know, when Edge was down there, he said it best, you know, on the main roster, we focus on the E in WWE, whereas in NXT, they focus on the second W in being wrestling.
Ooh.
You know? And what one person said was they feel like Kross is ready for the main roster just because they feel like he doesn't really suit NXT's style of wrestling, you know?
Interesting. I hadn't thought of that. You know, the guy has only been around for a cup of coffee, and most of it was rehabbing his shoulder.
Yeah. I definitely could see him walking out with the title, but I don't think NXT would be opposed to just having him lose just to go up to the main roster, because, I mean, who knows, you know? It depends on, again, I think I would rather him stay down in NXT just because who knows if Vince even is thinking about calling him up or if they're going to even have anything planned for him to call up. Cause,
I want him to stay down there. I think there's still more for him to do, you know, like have a decent reign. He'll go up against Adam Cole or Kyle O'Reilly, and you know what I mean? There's plenty to do down there. WWE are not short on people, on bodies. You know what I mean? They should make use of the people that they got, and don't you fret. Because Raw is about to adopt a newly converted Dominic Dijakovic, who's going to fill in all the blanks that Karrion Kross would.
Yeah. And I could see Balor losing there. And then if Rampage Brown doesn't beat Walter, I wouldn't be surprised if you see Balor pop up on NXT UK soon after.
Ooh. Do I want a defeated Balor to go up against Walter? No. Oh, man. Oh, now I need Balor to beat Kross so that he's up against Walter with all of the HP.
Now, what about Raquel versus Io?
Raquel versus Io. I don't like Raquel.
Me either. You know, I'm not trying to be mean, but she simply just reminds me of Braun Strowman. I feel like she's the female Braun Strowman, where right now her only gimmick is being big, strong woman.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, like I wish, and it's not like ooh, you're a heel, I don't like you. It's I wish Io had a different opponent.
Yeah, and I just have a feeling they're going to put the title on her, you know, because of the whole, Raquel pinned her at War Games, so...
Yes.
You know.
No, she is the next in line for this title match. It is well-deserved on paper. I'm just, in a you said it, main roster's all about the E. In NXT, this is where you see that gap. You go, gosh, I'm not being very E'd, am I?
Yeah. And, the way I'm thinking about it, like I was explaining to my dad, was just, they're going to realize, like, the moment they put the title on Raquel, that they somewhat screwed up and did it too soon.
I think it's too soon as well.
You're going from a champion with such a character and such like in-ring charisma and in-ring ability with Io to, as I mentioned, someone who doesn't have that strong of a character right now, if any character. They don't put on the most interesting matches. A lot of the interest in the match comes from when she's paired with Dakota Kai.
Mm-hmm. Or in a multi-person affair like the War Games match.
Yeah. And so I was explaining to my dad, it's just, I feel like it's too early and that they're going to soon realize that that's the mistake they made because, they're going to start putting her in these matches with all these other high-profile women who have things set in stone for them.
Yeah.
And essentially, again, not trying to be mean, but I feel like her as a character, her as a wrestler is going to get exposed because it's not like she can't go in the ring. It's just that they're going to realize that her style at right now, both as a character, a gimmick, and a wrestler, just isn't the right shift to make right now.
No, we need to like shifting gears in a car. We can't go from Io to Raquel. We need to go from Io to somebody else, to another person, you know what I mean? And then, like, over the course of one or two other title holders, get to Raquel.
Yeah. Like, you need, because with Io, it's like you always have just these insane, high-paced, matches. You have, like, these feuds and stories being built on, Io is this high, great champion, and, like, anyone that crosses her gets what they have coming to her for challenging her, and it's just like you need to go a bit lower to like someone who is going to be able to tell good stories and put on great matches, but maybe at a slower pace, to then like again slowing it down a bit with one person, to then finally having Raquel.
But maybe Raquel wins, Balor retains, so that my Balor-Walter match has all the hype behind it in the world.
And so before we close, I just want to mention this as well, is that, when Io went and brought the contract to Raquel, you see Dakota stand in front of her, and Io just, like, blows her off, like, whatever, I already beat you, you're not really anything, and she shoves the contract into Raquel. I came up with two theories. Either one, the obvious, in that Dakota's going to help Raquel beat Io just because Io disrespected her. Yep. Or two, real quick, before we have a minute left, Dakota turns on Raquel because she feels like, because of how Raquel is viewed as like the stronger one and essentially carries the team, she feels like this pairing has caused her to get so disrespected, and she's gonna blame it on Raquel, and this leads to Io retaining, which is, what I hope for.
How many of our predictions are gonna ring true? We'll have to tune in 3 weeks to see.
So we thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Rule 34 podcast. I've been your host, Jack, joined by my guest,
Mr. Solis.
As always, we thank you all for joining, and remember, if it exists, we have an opinion on it. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next episode.